My wife partied with my best friend and said I was imagining things. 2 months later, she announced her pregnancy. I congratulated her in front of everyone, then quietly asked her to explain the dates. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Ryan Harlow woke at 5 in the morning. Not because an alarm told him to. His body just knew. 38 years of patterns had trained him that way. He slipped out of bed without disturbing the sheets on Tessa's side. She was already gone. He stood in the kitchen with a mug of black coffee, watching steam curl toward the ceiling. The house sat quiet around him. Their neighborhood, Maple Glen, Ohio, had that particular suburban silence that felt less like peace and more like people hiding behind walls. Neighbors waved from driveways, but never stopped to talk. Block parties happened once a year where everyone pretended to care about each other's lives for 3 hours, then returned to their separate routines. Ryan liked routines. They made sense. Numbers in spreadsheets either balanced or they didn't. Machines at the plant either ran efficiently or they broke down. Causes had effects. Actions had consequences. He set his mug in the sink and checked his phone. 6:15. Tessa still wasn't home. His work boots sat by the front door where he'd left them the night before. He laced them slowly, methodically, the same way he approached everything. Ryan worked as an operations manager in manufacturing plant 40 minutes north. He'd spent 15 years there, climbing from floor supervisor to his current position through consistency rather than charisma. People respected him because he showed up, did the work, and never asked anyone to do something he wouldn't do himself. The mortgage got paid 2 weeks early every month. Their credit scores sat above 800. The lawn stayed trimmed. The cars ran clean. Everything looked fine from the outside. But Ryan had started noticing things. Small things at first. The way Tessa's laugh sounded different when certain people were around. How she angled her phone away from him when texts came through. The nights she came home after midnight claiming girls' night out. Smelling like cologne that wasn't hers. He tried talking to her about it 3 months ago. She'd said he was being paranoid, that he needed to trust her more, that his controlling nature was pushing her away. Gaslighting. Ryan didn't know that word yet, but he felt its shape in his chest like a stone. He drove to work as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the Ohio farmland in shades of amber and gold. The plant sprawled across 20 acres, all steel and concrete and the constant hum of machinery. Ryan parked in his usual spot and walked through the employee entrance, nodding at the security guard. "Morning, Mr. Harlow." "Morning, Tom." His office overlooked the production floor. Through the window, he could see conveyor belts moving, workers in safety vests checking quality standards, forklifts transporting pallets. Everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. Ryan sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Emails loaded. Schedule adjustments. Equipment maintenance reports. A vendor invoice that didn't match the purchase order. He made a note to follow up. Details mattered. Discrepancies meant something was wrong, and wrong things didn't fix themselves by ignoring them. His phone buzzed. "Tessa, need to talk tonight. Important." He stared at the message for a long moment before typing back a simple, "Okay." The day passed in meetings and production reviews. Ryan ate lunch at his desk, a sandwich from home. He reviewed safety protocols with the floor supervisors. He approved overtime requests. He denied a supply order that came in 15% over budget and told the vendor to rebid. By the time he left at 6, the sun had already started its descent. He drove home through streets lined with identical houses, each with their manicured lawns and 2-car garages and the quiet desperation of people living just slightly beyond their means. Their house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a modest ranch style he'd bought 8 years ago before meeting Tessa. The title sat in his name alone. He'd purchased it with money saved from a decade of careful budgeting, back when he thought homeownership meant stability. Tessa's car was already in the driveway. Ryan walked inside and found her in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch with her hands folded in her lap. She looked up when he entered, and he saw something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Nervousness, maybe, or excitement poorly disguised as nervousness. "Hey," she said. "Hey." He set his keys on the entry table. You said we needed to talk. Yeah. She stood, smoothing her shirt. I wanted to wait until you got home. It's kind of big news. Ryan waited. He'd learned lately that silence worked better than questions. People filled silence with truth more often than they answered direct inquiries. Tessa took a breath. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Ryan felt his face arrange itself into something that probably looked like surprise. Or happiness. He wasn't sure which. He paused. That's big news. I know. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I took 3 tests. All positive. I have a doctor's appointment next week to confirm, but I'm pretty sure. Ryan walked to the couch and sat down. His mind was already calculating. When had they last been intimate? 6 weeks ago. Maybe 7. And even then, it had been perfunctory. Scheduled. The kind of sex that happens because it's been too long, not because anyone particularly wanted it. When do you think it happened? He asked, keeping his voice level. Tessa sat beside him, not quite close enough to touch. Probably, I don't know, maybe that weekend in September? When you were home between the Indiana trip and the Columbus conference? Ryan nodded slowly. The Indiana trip. 7 days at a plant shut down in Gary. He'd stayed at the Hampton in off Route 80. He had the receipts in his work folder. Company logs showing his badge scans at the facility. Dinner meetings with the shutdown crew. Everything documented because that's what his job required. That weekend between trips hadn't existed. He'd come home on a Thursday night and left again Monday morning for Columbus. Less than 4 days. And Tessa had been distant the entire time, claiming a headache, exhaustion from work, stress about her mother's health. He didn't say any of this. Instead, he reached over and squeezed her hand. We should tell people, he said. Relief washed across her face. Yeah? You're okay with this? Of course. He manufactured a smile. It's our baby. That night, after Tessa fell asleep, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. The kind with graph paper, meant for tracking data. He opened to the first page and wrote the date at the top. Then he began writing down everything he remembered from the past 6 months. Dates Tessa had stayed out late. Names of people she'd mentioned. The backyard party at the Hendersons' place where he'd watched her and Nolan Pierce talk in the corner for 45 minutes, their heads close together, laughing about something Ryan apparently wasn't part of. Nolan Pierce, Ryan's best friend since they were 23. They'd met at a manufacturing trade conference and bonded over beers and complaints about the industry. Nolan worked in sales for an industrial equipment supplier. Charismatic where Ryan was reserved. Quick with jokes and always the center of attention at gatherings. Ryan had introduced Nolan to Tessa 3 years ago at a barbecue. Watched them hit it off immediately. Thought it was good that his wife got along with his friends. He wrote Nolan's name in the notebook and underlined it twice. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of performance. Tessa made doctor's appointments. Ryan went with her, sitting in waiting rooms that smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. They listened to the heartbeat on the ultrasound machine, watched a grainy image that supposedly showed their future. Ryan smiled at the right moments, asked the appropriate questions, held Tessa's hand in the parking lot afterward. At home, he continued his documentation. He noticed that Tessa texted constantly now, always with her phone tilted away. She started leaving rooms to take calls. When he asked who she was talking to, she said friends. Her mother. Work colleagues, even though she'd quit her job at the dental office 5 months ago, claiming the hours were too demanding. Ryan didn't push. He just wrote it down. One evening in late October, Tessa suggested they have a small gathering to announce the pregnancy to their families. Both sets of parents. Her sister, his brother, a few close friends. We could do it here, she said. This weekend. Nothing fancy, just people who matter. Ryan agreed. He spent Saturday cleaning the house while Tessa went shopping for decorations. She came back with pink and blue balloons, a cake from the grocery store bakery, little cards that said baby on board in cursive font. Their families arrived at 3. Ryan's parents first, his father immediately asking about the plant, his mother commenting on how good the house looked. Tessa's parents came next, her mother already tearing up before any announcement had been made. Then her sister, Julia, with her husband and their 2 kids who immediately started running through the house screaming. Ryan's brother showed up last, alone as usual, carrying a six-pack of craft beer he'd probably paid too much for. And Nolan came too, because of course he did. Because he was Ryan's best friend. And why wouldn't he be there for something this important? They gathered in the living room. Tessa stood in the center with Ryan beside her, his hand on her lower back, because that's what supportive husbands did. "Thank you all for coming," Tessa said, her voice bright and nervous. "Ryan and I wanted to share some really exciting news with everyone who matters most to us." She paused for effect. "I'm pregnant." The room erupted. Ryan's mother burst into tears. Tessa's mother screamed and rushed forward to hug her daughter. Her sister grabbed Julia and started jumping. The kids kept screaming, now about becoming cousins. Ryan accepted handshakes from the fathers. His brother clapped him on the shoulder. "Congratulations, man. Didn't think you had it in you." Everyone laughed. Ryan's eyes found Nolan across the room. He stood by the bookshelf, a beer in his hand, watching Tessa with an expression Ryan couldn't quite decipher. Not joy, not surprise, something more complicated. Their eyes met. Nolan raised his beer in a toast. Ryan nodded once and looked away. The party lasted 3 hours. People took photos, made plans for baby showers, discussed names and nursery colors. Ryan's father gave him advice about college savings plans. Tessa's mother talked about her own pregnancies and how beautiful motherhood would be. Ryan played his part perfectly. He laughed at jokes, accepted congratulations, stood next to Tessa in photos that would probably end up on social media with captions about blessings and new chapters. When everyone finally left and the house fell quiet again, Ryan started cleaning up. He collected empty bottles and plates with half-eaten cake. He popped balloons and threw them away. He wiped down counters and loaded the dishwasher. Tessa watched him from the doorway. "That went well," she said. Ryan rinsed a glass under the faucet. "Yeah." Everyone seemed happy. "You seemed distant." He shut off the water and turned to look at her. Really look at her. She stood there in the dress she'd bought specifically for today, her hair done in that way that probably took an hour, her makeup carefully applied to hide the tiredness around her eyes. "I'm not distant," he said. "I'm just tired." "You've been tired a lot lately." "Yeah, work's been demanding." She crossed her arms. "Is this about Nolan?" Ryan felt something shift in his chest. "What about Nolan?" "At the Hendersons' party. You kept watching us. You asked me about it afterward." "I asked because you two seemed really close. We were just talking." Her voice had that edge now, the one that meant a fight was coming. "You're so paranoid lately. I can't even have a conversation without you analyzing it." Ryan set the glass in the dishwasher. He dried his hands on a towel and folded it precisely, lining up the edges. "When did it happen?" he asked quietly. "When did what happen?" "The pregnancy. When exactly do you think you got pregnant?" Tessa's face changed. A flicker of something passed through her eyes. "I already told you. That weekend in September, right?" Ryan nodded. "The weekend between my trips." "Yeah. The weekend where I got home Thursday night and left Monday morning for Columbus." Tessa was very still now. So I was in Indiana for a week before that. Gary, Indiana. Plant shut down. The whole operations team was there. I have hotel receipts, company records, photos from team dinners. "What are you saying?" Ryan met her eyes. "I'm saying the dates don't match. I'm saying you claim you got pregnant during a weekend where you barely let me touch you, where you said you had a headache, where you slept on the couch 2 out of 3 nights because you claimed I was snoring. You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" Tessa's hands were shaking now. "You think I'm lying?" "I think the math doesn't work." "So what? You think I cheated? You think this baby isn't yours?" Her voice rose, high and sharp. "Is that what you're accusing me of?" Ryan didn't raise his voice. He never did. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just pointing out that the timeline you gave doesn't align with the facts." "I can't believe this." She grabbed her purse from the counter. "I can't believe you're doing this to me right now. I just announced our pregnancy to our families, and you're accusing me of cheating." "I didn't use that word." "You didn't have to." She headed toward the door. "I'm staying at Julia's tonight. I can't deal with this." Ryan listened to her car start in the driveway, listened to it pull away into the night. Then he walked to the spare bedroom, opened his laptop, and pulled up his calendar from September. He took screenshots of his schedule, downloaded his hotel receipt from the company travel portal. Pulled up the team photo from the shutdown in Gary, where he stood with 12 other people, a timestamp in the corner showing the date and location. He saved everything to a new folder on his desktop, labeled it with the date. Then he opened his notebook and added another entry. That night, Ryan slept on the couch. Not because he was angry. Anger required energy he didn't have. He was just finished. Something had broken inside him, not with a dramatic crack, but with a quiet settling, like a structure finally giving way under pressure it had been bearing too long. He woke at 5 out of habit, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table watching dawn break through the window. Tessa came home at 7. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her mascara from yesterday had smudged under her eyes. She stood in the doorway holding her purse like a shield. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay." She sat across from him at the table. Neither of them reached for the other. "I'm sorry about last night," she began. "I was overwhelmed. It was a big day, and you were making these accusations." "They weren't accusations. They were observations." "Fine. Observations." She rubbed her face. "But you're wrong. About the dates. About everything. This baby is yours, Ryan. I don't know why you're trying to make it something else." Ryan sipped his coffee. It had gone lukewarm. "I need you to stay somewhere else for a while." Tessa blinked. "What?" "I need space. To think. To figure out what's happening here." "You're kicking me out?" Her voice went sharp again. "While I'm pregnant, I'm asking you to stay somewhere else temporarily. This is my house, too." Ryan set his mug down carefully. "Actually, it's not." "What?" "The house. It's not yours. I bought it before we got married. The deed is in my name. Only my name." Tessa stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." He stood and walked to the filing cabinet in the corner of the kitchen. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. "This is a copy of the deed. This is a copy of the prenuptial agreement we signed that states this property remains separate. And this is Ohio property law regarding separate property in marriage." She opened the folder with shaking hands, looked at the papers. Her face went pale. "Under Ohio law, you have certain rights as a spouse," Ryan continued in that same calm voice he used at work when delivering bad news. "But those rights don't include automatic ownership of property purchased before marriage and maintained as separate property throughout. I've been paying the mortgage from my separate account. I've paid for all maintenance and improvements from my separate account. There's a clear paper trail. I can't believe you're doing this. You have 30 days to find other arrangements. That's more than legally required. I'm being generous." Tessa's hands clenched around the folder. "Generous? You're throwing me out while I'm pregnant, and you call that generous? I'm giving you a month to figure out your next step. I'll continue paying for your health insurance through my work plan until the baby is born. That's also generous. You're abandoning your child. I'm protecting myself from a situation that doesn't add up." She stood suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Everyone's going to know about this. I'm going to tell everyone what you're doing. Your family, my family, our friends. Everyone will know you're abandoning a pregnant woman." Ryan looked at her steadily. "Tell whoever you want. The facts don't change." "What facts?" "Your paranoid assumptions. The timeline that doesn't work. The way you guard your phone. The nights you don't come home. The fact that you and Nolan can't seem to stay away from each other at social gatherings." Tessa's face flushed red. "There's nothing between me and Nolan." "Then you'll have no problem with a DNA test when the baby's born." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Tessa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "A DNA test. Standard paternity testing. Non-invasive. Completely legal. If you're so certain the baby is mine, there's no reason to object." "I can't believe you don't trust me." "Trust has to be earned, Tessa. And right now, the evidence isn't supporting your story." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Stopped with her hand on the knob. "You'll regret this," she said without turning around. "Maybe, but I'll regret it on my terms, not yours." She left. The door clicked shut with a finality that sounded like punctuation. Ryan poured his cold coffee down the sink and made a fresh pot. Then he called his attorney. The attorney's office sat in a strip mall between a tax preparation service and a martial arts studio. Ryan had found him through a referral from someone at work who'd gone through his own divorce 2 years earlier. The advice had been blunt. Get someone who doesn't try to save your marriage, just your assets. Michael Torres ran a small practice specializing in family law. His office smelled like old coffee and printer toner. Degrees hung on the wall from a law school Ryan had never heard of. No prestigious pedigree, but the guy had a reputation for being thorough and ruthless when the situation called for it. They sat across from each other, a scarred desk between them. "Walk me through everything," Torres said, a legal pad open in front of him. Ryan did. He explained the timeline discrepancies, the behavior changes, the pregnancy announcement, the confrontation. He pulled out his phone and showed Torres the screenshots and receipts he'd saved, the calendar entries, the hotel confirmations, the company records. Torres listened without interrupting, taking notes in tight handwriting. When Ryan finished, Torres leaned back in his chair. "You want my honest assessment? That's why I'm here. She's going to fight hard. Claim you're abandoning her. Play the victim. Tell everyone who'll listen that you're a monster who threw out his pregnant wife. I know, and some people will believe her, no matter what evidence you have. Public opinion isn't a courtroom." Ryan nodded. "I understand." "Good." Torres tapped his pen against the pad. "Because if we do this, we do it right. Full documentation. No emotional reactions. Everything by the book. The moment you lose your cool or do something that looks vindictive, she'll use it against you. I don't plan on losing my cool. Everyone says that. Then their soon-to-be ex-wife shows up crying at their workplace, and they lose it in front of 50 witnesses." Torres studied Ryan's face. "But you seem like you mean it. You're calm. Maybe too calm. That work in your favor or against you depending on how people read it. What's the first step? File for divorce. Immediately. We cite irreconcilable differences. Clean, simple, no fault. Then we request paternity testing through the court. Can we do that before the baby's born? Yes. Non-invasive prenatal paternity testing. It's been admissible in Ohio courts for about 5 years now. Blood draw from the mother, blood draw from the alleged father. They analyze fetal DNA from the mother's bloodstream. 99.9% accurate. Ryan felt something settle in his chest. Relief, maybe, or just the comfort of having a path forward. "She'll resist it," he said. "They usually do, but the court will order it, especially once we present your documentation about the timeline. Judges don't like being lied to, and they really don't like paternity fraud. What about the house?" Torres flipped through the papers Ryan had brought. "This is solid. Purchased before marriage. Maintained separately. Prenup clearly states it remains separate property. She has no claim. She's been telling people she lives there. That's her home. Living somewhere doesn't mean owning it. She's technically a guest, or at most a tenant. Ohio law is clear on this. As long as you didn't commingle assets or put her name on the deed, it's yours. I didn't. Good. Then she has no legal standing. She'll ask for it anyway, because lawyers tell their clients to ask for everything. But she won't get it." Torres made more notes. "What about her employment situation? She quit her job 5 months ago. Said it was too stressful. I've been covering all our expenses since then." "Voluntarily quit." "Yes. That helps. She can't claim financial dependence if she chose to leave her job, especially if she didn't discuss it with you first." "She didn't." "Even better." Torres smiled, the expression sharp and professional. "Here's what's going to happen. We file first. That's important. Whoever files first controls the narrative. We request the paternity test. We make it clear this isn't about being cruel or vindictive. It's about establishing facts. What if the test comes back negative? Then you're off the hook for child support. All parental rights and responsibilities terminate. You walk away clean." Ryan absorbed this. "And if it comes back positive?" Torres tilted his head. "Do you think it will?" "No." "Then let's focus on that scenario. We establish you're not the father. At that point, she has no claim on you for anything related to the child. No support, no custody battles, nothing. As for the divorce itself, with a prenup and separate property, it should be straightforward. You might owe her something for spousal support, depending on how long you've been married. For years. That's borderline. In Ohio, marriages under 10 years usually don't result in long-term support, especially if she voluntarily left her job. We might have to negotiate a temporary support payment just to get her to sign, but it won't be substantial and it won't be forever. Ryan considered this. How long will the whole process take? Depends on how much she fights. If she contests everything, could be a year or more. If she's smart and realizes she has no leverage, maybe 6 months. She'll fight. Most do. Torres closed his legal pad. My retainer is $5,000. That covers initial filing and the first round of motions. If this goes to trial, we'll need to discuss additional fees. But I don't think it'll get that far. The evidence is too clear. Ryan pulled out his checkbook. He'd opened a new bank account last week, separate from the joint account he shared with Tessa. Moved half the money over and left her half in the original account. Fair, clean, documented. He wrote the check and slid it across the desk. Torres took it and stood, extending his hand. One more thing, Ryan said. I need to know if there's any way this could blow back on me legally. Anything I should be worried about. Are you planning to do anything illegal? No. Then you're fine. Just don't contact her except through attorneys once the papers are served. Don't show up at her family's house. Don't make threats. Don't post anything on social media. Stay clean, stay calm, stay documented. I can do that. I believe you. Torres walked him to the door. Mr. Harlow, I've handled a lot of these cases. Most of my clients are angry. Some are sad. Some are both. You're neither. That's either really healthy or really concerning. Which do you think it is? I think you made your decision before you walked into my office. Everything else is just paperwork. Ryan drove home as the afternoon sun slanted through his windshield. He stopped at a grocery store and bought ingredients for a simple dinner. Pasta, tomato sauce, garlic bread. He used to cook more when he was single. Tessa had taken over the kitchen after they married, claiming she enjoyed it. Another thing he'd given up without quite noticing. The house felt different when he walked in. Emptier, but not in a bad way. More like it had returned to itself after being occupied by something foreign. He cooked dinner for one, ate at the kitchen table while reading news on his phone, washed his dishes, wiped down the counters. At 8 o'clock, his phone rang. Tessa. He let go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, another call. Voicemail again. Then a text. We need to talk. Please. Ryan set his phone on the counter and walked to his bedroom. He pulled out a duffel bag and started packing Tessa's things. Not out of spite, just practicality. If she was going to stay somewhere else for 30 days, she'd need her clothes and toiletries. He folded everything neatly, packed her makeup and hair products in a separate bag. Her jewelry went into a small box. He worked methodically, not touching anything that wasn't essential, not going through drawers or looking at personal items, just gathering what she'd need. When he finished, he set the bags by the front door. His phone buzzed continuously. More calls. More texts. Ryan, please answer. I'm scared. Can we please just talk? I made a mistake pushing you. I'm sorry. Please don't do this. Ryan turned the phone face down and went to bed at his usual time. The next morning, Tessa's sister Julia showed up at the house. Ryan watched through the window as she got out of her car, her face set in an expression of righteous anger. He opened the door before she could knock. Ryan, what the hell is going on? Julia demanded. Tessa's things are by the door. I packed the essentials. If she needs anything else, she can text me a list and I'll have it ready. You can't just throw her out. She's pregnant. I'm aware. Do you have any idea how this looks? What people are saying? I imagine they're saying a lot of things. Ryan stepped aside so Julia could see the bags. But what people say and what's actually happening are two different things. Julia grabbed the bags roughly. She's my sister. She's carrying your baby. And you're treating her like someone who needs to stay somewhere else while we figure things out. That's all this is. That's not all this is, and you know it. Julia's voice cracked slightly. She's devastated. She cried all night. She doesn't understand why you're being so cruel. Ryan met her eyes. Did she tell you about the timeline? What timeline? The conception date. When exactly she thinks she got pregnant. Julia shifted uncomfortably. I don't see how that's relevant. It's extremely relevant. Ask her about it. Ask her where I was that week. Then check if her dates make sense. You're paranoid. Maybe. Or maybe I'm paying attention. Julia hauled the bags to her car and drove away without another word. Ryan closed the door and poured another cup of coffee. His phone rang. His mother this time. He answered. Ryan, Sweetheart, I just got off the phone with Tessa. She's very upset. She says you've asked her to leave. That's correct. But why? What happened? Everything seemed fine at the announcement party. Ryan walked to his living room and sat on the couch. Mom, I can't get into all the details, but there are some things that don't add up. I need space to figure it out. She's pregnant with your grandchild. She claims she is. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, what are you saying? I'm saying I have doubts. About the timeline. About the situation. I'm not making any accusations. I'm just being careful. His mother's voice changed, became softer. Ryan, marriage is hard. Sometimes people make mistakes. But you have to consider the baby. I am considering the baby. That's why I'm being thorough. You can't just throw her out. I didn't throw her out. I asked her to stay elsewhere temporarily while we sort through some issues. That's reasonable. It doesn't feel reasonable to her. I understand that. But my decisions aren't based on what feels comfortable. They're based on what protects me. Another pause. You sound so cold. I'm not cold. I'm clear. There's a difference. His mother sighed. Your father and I are worried about you. Don't be. I'm handling this. Are you? Yes. They talked for a few more minutes. His mother tried various approaches. Guilt, logic, emotional appeal. Ryan listened patiently and responded calmly to each one. Eventually, she ran out of angles and ended the call with a tight goodbye. 2 hours later, his father called. Your mother is upset. I know. She thinks you're making a mistake. I'm aware of her opinion. His father was quiet for a moment. You're not usually impulsive. If you're doing this, you have reasons. I do. Good reasons? I think so. That's all I needed to hear. His father cleared his throat. Your mother wants me to convince you to reconcile. I'm not going to do that. You're a grown man. You make your own decisions. I appreciate that. But I'm going to say this. Whatever you start here, finish it. Don't do things halfway. If you're going to walk this path, walk it all the way to the end. Ryan felt something warm in his chest. Understanding from someone who knew him. I will, he said. All right then. His father's voice roughened slightly. Call if you need anything. They hung up. The rest of the day passed quietly. Ryan went to work, came home, ate dinner, documented everything in his notebook. At 9 p.m., there was a knock on his door. Nolan Pierce stood on his front step, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. Ryan opened the door wider. Want to come in? Nolan hesitated, then stepped inside. They stood in the entryway, not moving to sit down. Tessa called me, Nolan said. She's pretty messed up about all this. I imagine she is. She said you're accusing her of cheating. Ryan tilted his head slightly. I haven't accused her of anything. I've questioned the timeline of her pregnancy. There's a difference. Seems like the same thing to me. Then you're not paying attention. Nolan shifted his weight. Look, man, I know things have been weird lately, but you can't honestly think. Can't think what? That she'd do something like that. Ryan studied his best friend's face. The way he wouldn't quite meet Ryan's eyes. The tension in his shoulders. The careful way he chose his words. How often do you talk to Tessa? Ryan asked quietly. What? Simple question. How often do you two communicate? Texts, calls, whatever. I don't know. Not that often. Why? Because I've seen her phone light up with your name a lot lately. Because at the Hendersons' party, you two talked in the corner for 45 minutes. Because every time there's a gathering, you two gravitate toward each other. Nolan's face reddened. We're friends. You're the one who introduced us. I did. And I thought it was good that my wife got along with my best friend. Past tense. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm starting to connect dots I should have connected months ago. You're being paranoid. Everyone keeps saying that. But paranoia implies the fear is irrational. What I'm experiencing is pattern recognition. Nolan took a step back. I came here to try to help. To see if I could get you two to work things out. Did Tessa ask you to come? What? No. I just thought. You're lying. Ryan's voice stayed level. You're lying right now to my face in my house. She sent you here to convince me to back down. To make me feel crazy for questioning things. That's not. Get out. Nolan stopped. Ryan, get out of my house. They stared at each other. Ryan felt completely calm. Beyond anger. Past hurt. Just clear about what he was seeing. Nolan left without another word. Ryan locked the door behind him and added a note to his documentation. The divorce papers got served 2 weeks later. Ryan had anticipated dramatics, but Tessa surprised him by accepting the documents calmly. Her attorney was exactly what Ryan expected, a middle-aged woman with a reputation for aggressive representation of wives in divorce cases. The first settlement offer arrived via email 3 days after service. Torres called Ryan to discuss it. "She's asking for a lot," Torres said. "How much?" "The house, even though she has no legal claim. 50% of your savings and retirement accounts. Temporary spousal support of $3,000 a month until the baby turns 3. Full custody once the baby is born. And child support calculated at maximum Ohio guidelines." Ryan almost laughed. "She's asking for everything." That's the strategy. Ask for the moon, settle for the sky. Her attorney knows she won't get most of this. They're hoping you'll negotiate somewhere in the middle out of guilt or exhaustion. What's our counter? We don't counter yet. First, we wait for the paternity test. That's the nuclear option that makes everything else irrelevant. When's that scheduled? Next week. She tried to fight it, but the judge wasn't having it. Said establishing paternity is in everyone's best interest, including the child's. She has to submit to the blood draw or face contempt charges. Good. Ryan. Torres paused. "I need to prepare you for something. If the test comes back showing you're the father, this whole strategy falls apart. We'd be back to negotiating a settlement that includes child support and custody. It won't come back that way. You seem very certain." "I am." "Okay, then we wait." The week passed slowly. Ryan worked, came home, made dinner, documented everything. He'd started sleeping better. Actually, the constant tension of living with Tessa had been exhausting in ways he hadn't fully recognized until it was gone. His phone buzzed less now. Tessa had stopped calling after her attorney told her all communication needed to go through legal channels. His family had mostly given up trying to change his mind. A few friends had reached out, awkward messages asking if he was okay. He responded politely and briefly. Nolan hadn't contacted him at all. The test results came back on a Tuesday. Torres called him at work. "We got the results." Ryan walked outside to the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, and 0% probability of paternity. Ryan stood very still. Across the lot, trucks backed up to loading docks. Forklifts moved pallets. Everything continued exactly as it had before, but something fundamental had shifted. "0, he repeated. "Not even close. The report is conclusive. You are not the biological father." Okay. That's all you have to say. What else is there?" "I was right. The timeline didn't work because it wasn't my child." Torres made a noise that might have been admiration or concern. "We're filing this with the court today, along with a motion to terminate all child-related claims and demands. You're off the hook for everything related to the baby." "What about the divorce?" "That proceeds normally. But without the child complicating things, it's straightforward. She has no claim to the house. Her voluntary unemployment means limited spousal support. We're looking at maybe 6 months of temporary support, tops. Maybe 5,000 total. Small price to pay." Ryan let out a breath. "Good. There's one more thing. Her attorney called me after getting the results. She's going to claim you're the one who cheated, that you drove her to it through emotional abuse and neglect. Let her claim whatever she wants. The facts don't support it. That's what I told her. But be prepared for it to get ugly before it gets resolved. People don't like being exposed." Ryan ended the call and went back inside. He sat at his desk and opened his calendar, looking at the dates ahead. In 6 months, maybe less, this would all be over. He'd be single again, alone again, free again. The thought didn't scare him at all. The courtroom smelled like old wood and recycled air. Ryan sat at a table next to Torres, hands folded calmly while they waited for the judge to enter. Across the aisle, Tessa sat with her attorney, Karen McMasters. Tessa's pregnancy showed now, a small curve visible under her dress. She kept her head down, not looking in Ryan's direction. The gallery behind them held a few people. Tessa's sister Julia. Tessa's mother. His mother too, though she sat alone, hands clutched tightly in her lap. "All rise." Judge Margaret Sullivan entered through a side door. Late 50s, gray hair pulled back severely, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She'd been on the family court bench for 12 years. Torres had told Ryan she had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings based on evidence rather than emotion. They sat. Judge Sullivan opened a folder on her desk and read silently for what felt like several minutes. The courtroom stayed quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Finally, she looked up. "I've reviewed the paternity test results," she said. Her voice carried easily in the small space. "I've also reviewed the preliminary motions, the property documentation, and the initial settlement demands. Ms. McMasters, I'm going to give you an opportunity to explain your client's position." Kara McMasters stood. She was tall, professionally dressed, with the kind of smooth voice that probably worked well in negotiations. "Your Honor, my client is a pregnant woman who was asked to leave her marital home during an extremely vulnerable time. Mr. Harlow's actions have been punitive and controlling. While the paternity test results are unfortunate, they don't excuse his treatment of my client. She remains entitled to spousal support, division of marital assets, and compensation for the emotional distress caused by his abandonment." Judge Sullivan made a note. "Mr. Torres?" Torres stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Harlow asked Ms. Harlow to stay elsewhere temporarily after discovering significant timeline discrepancies regarding her claimed pregnancy date. This was after she admitted to late nights out, guarded phone usage, and other behavior that raised legitimate concerns. The property in question was purchased by Mr. Harlow before the marriage and maintained as separate property per their prenuptial agreement. Ms. Harlow voluntarily quit her job 5 months ago despite no financial necessity to do so. My client has conducted himself with restraint and propriety throughout this process." "I see." Judge Sullivan looked at Tessa. "Ms. Harlow, I'd like to hear from you directly. Can you explain to me why you believe you're entitled to the marital home?" Tessa stood slowly. Her hands shook slightly as she gripped the table edge. "It's been my home for 4 years, Your Honor," she said softly. "I've lived there, decorated it, made it ours. Just because the deed is in his name doesn't mean it's not mine too. Did you contribute financially to the mortgage or property improvements?" Tessa hesitated. "I contributed in other ways. I took care of the house, cooked, cleaned." "Were those contributions explicitly agreed upon as payment toward the property?" "No, but then legally, those are marital contributions, not property ownership contributions. They might factor into support calculations, but they don't establish an ownership interest." Judge Sullivan's voice remained neutral. "What about your employment? Why did you leave your job?" "It was too stressful. The hours were difficult." "Did you discuss this decision with Mr. Harlow before quitting?" Tessa glanced at her attorney. "No." "Did you have another job lined up?" "No, Your Honor." "Were there health reasons or other compelling circumstances that required you to stop working?" I needed a break." Judge Sullivan made another note. "Ms. Harlow, I'm going to be very direct with you. You engaged in extramarital relations that resulted in a pregnancy. You claimed the child was your husband's despite timeline inconsistencies. When confronted, you attempted to gaslight him and accused him of paranoia. The paternity test definitively proved he was not the father. You then demanded the property he owned before your marriage, substantial spousal support despite voluntarily leaving your employment, and child support for a child that is not his. Do I have these facts correct?" Tessa's face crumpled. "He abandoned me while I was pregnant. He asked you to stay elsewhere after discovering your infidelity and false paternity claims. That's not abandonment. That's self-protection." Judge Sullivan leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Harlow, this court deals with difficult situations every day, but it deals with them based on law and evidence, not on who cries more convincingly. The evidence here is clear." Kara McMasters stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client is genuinely remorseful. She made mistakes, yes, but she's still entitled to fair treatment under Ohio marital law. She is entitled to fair treatment, which is what she's getting." Judge Sullivan flipped through more papers. "Let me address each claim individually. First, the house. Mr. Harlow has provided clear documentation that this property was purchased before marriage with separate funds, maintained with separate funds, and protected by a valid prenuptial agreement. Ms. Harlow has no legal claim. Motion for property division is denied. Tessa let out a small sound. Her mother reached forward from the gallery and squeezed her shoulder. Second, spousal support. Ms. Harlow voluntarily terminated her employment without cause or discussion with her spouse. However, she did contribute to the household during the marriage. The marriage lasted 4 years, which in Ohio typically results in short-term transitional support. I'm ordering Mr. Harlow to pay spousal support of $1,000 per month for 6 months. After that, support terminates. Ryan felt Torres relax slightly beside him. Third, child support and custody. The child is not Mr. Harlow's. He has no legal responsibility, no parental rights, and no obligations related to this child. All claims related to the child are dismissed. Your Honor, Karen McMasters tried again. My client is in a genuinely difficult position. She's pregnant, unemployed, and those are consequences of her own choices, Judge Sullivan interrupted. I sympathize with difficult situations, but this court cannot and will not reward fraudulent behavior. Ms. Harlow misrepresented paternity. She attempted to claim property to which she had no right. She voluntarily left employment and then demanded her husband support her indefinitely. These are not the actions of someone operating in good faith. She closed the folder. The divorce is granted. Mr. Harlow retains sole ownership of the property. Temporary spousal support as outlined. No child-related obligations. The marriage is dissolved effective immediately pending the standard waiting period. Do either of you have any questions? No, Your Honor, Torres said. Karen McMasters looked at Tessa, who was crying silently now. No, Your Honor. Then we're adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Ryan stood and shook Torres's hand. Around them, people started moving. Tessa's mother rushed to her daughter. Julia glared at Ryan from across the aisle. His own mother sat still, her expression unreadable. They walked out of the courtroom into the hallway. Tessa and her family went in one direction. Ryan and Torres went in the other. That went as well as we could have hoped, Torres said. Clean victory. You're done with this. Ryan nodded. He felt nothing. Not triumph. Not vindication. Just completion. His mother approached from down the hall. She stopped a few feet away, studying his face. Are you satisfied now? She asked quietly. I'm resolved. That poor girl is destroyed. That poor girl lied about who the father of her child was and tried to take everything I owned. She destroyed herself. His mother's lips pressed together. When did you become so hard? I didn't become hard. I became clear. There's a difference. I hope you can live with this. I can. Ryan met her eyes. Can you? She didn't answer, just turned and walked away. Torres clapped him on the shoulder. You need anything else from me today? No, I'm good. All right. Final paperwork will be ready in a few weeks. After that, you're completely free. Ryan walked to his car alone. The courthouse parking lot stretched out under an overcast sky. November in Ohio meant bare trees and cold wind, and the particular gray light that made everything look washed out. He sat in his car for a minute before starting the engine, hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. Then he drove home. The house felt quieter than usual when he walked in. He'd gotten used to that quiet over the past few months. Started to prefer it. He made coffee, changed out of his suit, and sat at the kitchen table with his notebook. He opened to a blank page and wrote today's date. Under it, he wrote, Divorce finalized. 0% probability of paternity. All claims denied. Then he closed the notebook and put it in a drawer. That evening, his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. Hello. Ryan? It's Nolan. Ryan almost hung up, but curiosity stopped him. What do you want? I heard about the court hearing. About the results. Nolan's voice sounded strained. Look, I know you probably hate me right now. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything about you. That's probably worse. A bitter laugh. Listen, I just wanted you to know I didn't plan for any of this to happen. It just did. And I know that's not an excuse, but you're right. It's not an excuse. Silence on the line. She told me it was yours, Nolan said finally. The baby. She swore to me it was yours. I believed her. And now that you know it's not? More silence. I'm not ready to be a father, Nolan admitted. I never wanted kids. That's why Jessica and I broke up last year. She wanted marriage and children, and I couldn't do it. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. So what are you saying? I'm saying I made a mistake. A huge one. And I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it. You live with it. Ryan's voice stayed level. You take responsibility for what you did. You support Tessa and that child. You face the consequences of your choices like an adult. I know. You're right. You just wanted me to tell you it's okay? To absolve you? I'm not going to do that. You slept with my wife. You lied to my face. You tried to make me think I was crazy. Those are your choices. Own them. Ryan. Ryan hung up. He blocked the number and set his phone aside. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. The divorce was finalized, but not yet official. Ryan kept working, kept his routines. People at the plant had heard bits and pieces of what happened, but no one asked directly. He appreciated that. The last thing he needed was office sympathy or judgment. He started looking at smaller places to live. The house had served its purpose, but it felt too big now. Too full of memories he didn't particularly want. A realtor came through and gave him a market evaluation. The number was good. Housing prices had gone up over the past 8 years. Ryan listed it 3 weeks after the hearing. It sold in 5 days. He found a rental near Lake Erie, about an hour west. A one-bedroom place with a small porch overlooking the water. Quiet. No neighbors who knew his story. No connections to his former life except the drive to work. He packed his belongings methodically, donated most of the furniture, kept only what he actually needed or wanted. Clothes, books, his coffee maker, the notebook with all his documentation, which he filed away in a box labeled with the date. Moving day came on a Saturday in early December. Ryan hired movers for the heavy items and did the rest himself. By evening, he was standing in his new place watching the sun set over the lake through a window that didn't have curtains yet. His phone buzzed. His father. Heard you moved? Yeah, today. How's the new place? Good. Quiet. That's what you wanted. Yeah. His father was quiet for a moment. Your mother's still upset. She thinks you were too harsh. I know, but I think you did what you had to do. Ryan felt that warmth again. Understanding. Thanks. You doing okay? I'm doing fine. Good. That's good. His father cleared his throat. Listen, your mother and I are having Christmas at the house this year. You're welcome to come. No pressure. But the invitation's there. I'll think about it. Fair enough. Take care of yourself, son. They hung up. Ryan ordered pizza from a place down the road and ate it sitting on his porch despite the cold. The lake stretched out dark and vast, lights from boats dotting the surface. Somewhere out there, people were living their lives, making their choices, dealing with their consequences. He'd done what he needed to do, protected himself, stood firm, didn't back down when everyone told him he was being cruel or unreasonable or paranoid. The facts had proven him right. That should have felt satisfying, vindicating. Instead, it just felt necessary. 3 months after the divorce finalized, Ryan ran into Tessa at a grocery store. She was showing significantly now. The pregnancy must have been close to term. She stood in the produce section, hand resting on her stomach, staring at tomatoes like they held some complex answer. Ryan could have turned around, could have gone to a different section, but something made him continue down the aisle. She looked up and saw him. Her face went pale. Ryan, Tessa. They stood there for a moment, separated by a display of apples. How are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Fine. You? She touched her stomach again. Managing. Ryan nodded. He didn't ask about the baby. Didn't ask about Nolan. Didn't ask about her living situation or employment or any of it. I need to apologize, Tessa said suddenly. I know you probably don't want to hear it, but I need to say it. I was wrong. About everything. I lied. I tried to manipulate you. I tried to take things that weren't mine. And I'm sorry. Ryan studied her face. She looked tired. Older somehow. The kind of aging that comes from stress rather than time. Okay, he said. That's it? Just okay. What else do you want me to say? That I accept your apology? That it's all water under the bridge? It's not. You made your choices. I made mine. We both have to live with them. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for things to turn out like this. No one ever does. But they did anyway. Do you hate me? Ryan considered the question honestly. No, I don't hate you. I don't really feel anything about you anymore. You're just someone I used to be married to. She wiped at her eyes. That's somehow worse than hate. Maybe, but it's the truth. Nolan, she trailed off. I don't want to know. He's not. I don't want to know, Ryan repeated, more firmly. Tessa nodded. She picked up a tomato, looked at it, put it back down. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said quietly. I already found it. It's called peace. Ryan walked past her, finished his shopping, and left the store. He never saw her again. Years passed with the kind of quiet steadiness that Ryan had always preferred. He stayed in a rental near Lake Erie, eventually signing a long-term lease that the landlord was happy to offer. The work at the plant continued. He got promoted to Regional Operations Director, which came with more responsibility and better pay, but didn't fundamentally change his routine. He woke at 5, made coffee, went to work, came home. The simplicity felt right. Ryan dated occasionally. Nothing serious. A woman from the accounting department at work took him to dinner a few times. They went to movies, shared meals, eventually drifted apart when she got offered a job in Cleveland and neither of them felt strongly enough to try long distance. A yoga instructor he met at a coffee shop lasted 3 months. She was kind and funny and had a way of making mundane things feel interesting. But when she started talking about moving in together, Ryan realized he wasn't ready. Might never be ready. They ended things amicably. He didn't consider himself closed off, just careful, intentional. He knew what he wanted from life now, and it didn't include the kind of entanglement that required trusting someone else with his foundation. 5 years after the divorce, Ryan's father died. Heart attack. Quick and unexpected. Ryan took time off work and drove back to Maple Glen for the funeral. His mother looked smaller somehow. Grief did that to people. She hugged him at the service, held on longer than usual. I'm glad you came, she said. Of course I came. They stood in the funeral home, surrounded by his father's friends and colleagues. People shared stories, talked about what a good man he'd been, how fair, how steady. Ryan recognized himself in those descriptions. At the reception afterward, his mother pulled him aside. Your father was proud of you, she said. I hope you know that. I do. He understood why you did what you did. Back then, with Tessa, she looked down at her hands. I didn't. Not for a long time. But I think I do now. It's okay if you don't. No, I need you to hear this. She met his eyes. You were right. You protected yourself. And that took strength I didn't understand at the time. I thought you were being cruel, but you were just being clear. Ryan felt something shift in his chest. Forgiveness he hadn't realized he needed. Thank you, he said quietly. His mother squeezed his hand. Your father would be proud of who you've become. Ryan stayed in town for 3 days, helping his mother with arrangements and paperwork, going through his father's things, sorting what to keep and what to donate. The process felt familiar, methodical, necessary. On his last evening before driving back to the lake, he took a walk through his old neighborhood, past the house where he'd lived with Tessa. Someone else owned it now, a family with kids, bikes in the driveway, a trampoline in the backyard. He felt nothing looking at it. No nostalgia, no regret, just acknowledgement that it had been a chapter in his life that was now closed. He drove back to Lake Erie as the sun set behind him, leaving Maple Glen in the rearview mirror. More years passed. Ryan turned 45, then 48. His hair grayed at the temples. His face showed lines that came from squinting at spreadsheets and machinery rather than from worry. He bought the rental property when the landlord decided to sell. It made financial sense. He invested well, saved carefully, built a life that was stable and peaceful and entirely his own. Occasionally, very occasionally, he wondered what happened to Tessa, whether she ever got her life together, whether Nolan stepped up or disappeared, whether the child grew up okay despite the mess that surrounded its conception. But these thoughts came and went quickly. They weren't his responsibility, not his story to follow. One Saturday morning in his 50th year, Ryan sat on his porch with coffee, watching the sun rise over the lake. The water was calm. Birds called from the trees behind the house. The air smelled like pine and fresh water and the particular crispness that comes right before autumn. He thought about the notebook in his filing cabinet, the one with all the dates and documentation from 10 years ago. He'd kept it, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of a decision well made. Evidence that clarity and consistency had mattered. That he'd stood firm when everyone told him to be flexible. That he'd protected himself when others claimed he should sacrifice for someone who didn't deserve it. The notebook represented something important. Not bitterness, not revenge, just accountability. Ryan finished his coffee and went inside. He had plans to work on a project in his garage, an old motorcycle he bought cheap and was slowly rebuilding. It didn't have a deadline. No one was waiting for it. He did it just because he enjoyed the process. The way problems had solutions. The way broken things could be fixed with patience and the right tools. His phone sat on the counter, mostly quiet these days. He had a few friends from work. Stayed in occasional contact with his brother. Called his mother every Sunday. He didn't need more than that. Some people might have looked at his life and seen loneliness. A man living alone. No wife. No children. No dramatic adventures or exciting stories. But Ryan looked at his life and saw peace. He saw mornings without tension. Decisions made without having to check with someone else. Space that was entirely his to arrange or leave empty as he chose. Financial security built on careful planning rather than emotional impulse. He saw a life built intentionally, brick by brick, choice by choice. And he saw the cost of that life too. The relationships that didn't happen because he couldn't let his guard down. The opportunities missed because he valued safety over risk. The parts of himself that had hardened into something protective but also isolated. Ryan was aware of all of it. He'd made his choices with open eyes, and he didn't regret any of it. That evening, as the sun set and painted the lake in shades of orange and purple, Ryan thought back to that moment in the courthouse, when Judge Sullivan had ruled in his favor, when the facts had aligned and the truth had emerged and accountability had actually occurred. People called it karma, justice, comeuppance. Ryan called it consequences. Actions had results. Lies got exposed. Fraud got punished. People who thought they could manipulate reality eventually collided with facts that didn't care about their feelings or excuses. He'd been part of that collision once, had stood firm while the impact happened, had weathered the social pressure and emotional manipulation and desperate attempts to make him back down. And when it was over, he'd walked away clean. Not happy in some explosive way. Not triumphant. Just free. Free from someone else's lies. Free from obligations built on deception. Free to build a life that made sense to him. Some people needed grand gestures and emotional catharsis. Ryan just needed clarity. And he'd found it. Had held on to it. Had built 10 years of steady, quiet life on the foundation of one hard decision made at exactly the right time. He went inside and made dinner. Grilled chicken, rice, vegetables. Simple and precise. He ate at his small table, looking out the window at the lake turning dark. After dinner, he washed his dishes and wiped down the counters and turned off the lights. He locked the door and checked the windows. Routines that made sense. That kept things orderly. Then he went to bed early because he'd wake at 5 tomorrow. Same as always. Same as he'd been doing for 30 years. And as he drifted off to sleep in his quiet house by the lake, Ryan Harlow felt no regret, no bitterness, no anger, just the deep, settled peace that comes from knowing you made the right choice. And never looked back.